The star was dying, and nobody had told the humans. Commander Sarah Chen stood in the observation deck of Mining Station 7, watching the sun of Kepler 442 grow dimmer each day. The light that once bathed the frozen moon in pale yellow now flickered like a candle in the wind. She pressed her hand against the cold glass and felt the temperature dropping even through her thermal suit. Behind her, the station hummed with the sound of 40 tired workers trying to keep the life support systems running. They had been mining rare minerals from this moon for 3 years, sending shipment after shipment to the Galactic Concordat. The alien coalition that ruled this part of space called it contributing to galactic prosperity. Sarah called it what it really was: slavery with extra steps. The door hissed open. Marcus Webb, the station's chief engineer, walked in carrying a datapad. His face was pale, and not just from the cold. He had been a physics professor on Earth before the Concordat came. Now he fixed mining equipment and tried not to think about the life he had lost. "Sarah, we need to talk," Marcus said quietly. His breath formed small clouds in the air. The heating system was failing again. She turned to face him. "Is it the reactor?" "No, it's worse." He handed her the datapad. "I've been tracking the star's decay rate. I ran the numbers 3 times because I thought I made a mistake." Sarah looked at the screen. The graphs and equations meant little to her, but the conclusion at the bottom was clear enough. 6 weeks? Maybe 7 if we're lucky. After that, the star will collapse completely. No light, no heat. This whole system will become a frozen grave. The words hung in the air between them. Sarah felt her stomach twist. She looked out at the dying sun again, then back at Marcus. "Where are the Concordat ships?" "They monitor everything we do. They must know about this." Marcus tapped the datapad, bringing up communication logs. "That's the thing. They did know. I found encrypted files in the station's computer. The Concordat has been tracking this star's instability for 6 months. They never told us." Sarah's hands clenched into fists. "What about the evacuation protocols? Every Concordat facility is supposed to have emergency transport. Look outside." She turned to the window. The orbital space around Kepler 442b was empty. Usually there were at least a dozen Concordat ships coming and going, picking up mineral shipments and dropping off supplies. Now there was nothing but darkness and distant stars. "They left," Marcus said, 3 days ago. Took every ship capable of faster-than-light travel. The alien overseers, the merchants, the supervisors, all gone. They left us here to die." Sarah felt a cold rage building inside her chest. The Concordat had come to Earth 70 years ago, promising humanity a place among the stars. They had given humans jobs, technology, and purpose. But humans were always the ones doing the dangerous work, the dirty work, the work that could get you killed. And now when disaster came, the aliens simply left. She activated her communicator. "This is Commander Chen to all human stations in the Kepler system. Emergency meeting in 1 hour. Use encrypted channels only." Over the next hour, Sarah contacted every human outpost in the system. There were 12 mining stations scattered across 3 moons and 2 asteroid belts. In total, 40,000 humans worked in the Kepler system. 40,000 people who had been abandoned to freeze in the dark. The meeting took place over a holographic network. Faces appeared around Sarah, projecting from stations millions of kilometers apart. She recognized most of them. Commander James Okafor from Station 3. Captain Maria Santos from the asteroid mining operation. Dozens of crew leaders, engineers, and supervisors. All of them looked tired and scared. "I'll make this quick," Sarah began. "The star is dying. We have 6, maybe 7 weeks before it collapses completely. The Concordat knew and didn't tell us. They've taken all the ships and left us here." The holographic faces showed shock, anger, and despair. One man started crying. Another began shouting curses at the absent aliens. "We're dead," someone said. "Even if we had ships, we couldn't reach another system in time. We don't have faster-than-light engines." "I know," Sarah said. She took a deep breath. "So we're not going to run. We're going to build a new star." Silence filled the channel. Everyone stared at her like she had lost her mind. Marcus stepped forward. "She's not crazy. I've been reviewing old Earth research, files from before the Concordat came. Humanity was working on controlled stellar fusion in the 22nd century. The theory is solid. We were close to making it work. Close doesn't light a sun," Maria Santos said. "Even if the theory works, we don't have the resources or the time." "We have 12 mining stations full of equipment," Sarah replied. We have refineries, fusion reactors, and 40,000 people who are already dead unless we try something impossible. The Concordat thinks we're too primitive to save ourselves. I say we prove them wrong." She looked at each face in the holographic circle. "I won't order anyone to do this. It's probably suicide, but I'd rather die trying to light a fire than freeze in the dark, waiting for mercy that will never come. Who's with me?" For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then James Okafor nodded slowly. "Station 3 is in." One by one, the other commanders agreed. They had nothing to lose and everything to prove. The humans began planning their impossible sunrise. Marcus Webb had not slept in 3 days. His eyes burned as he stared at the old research files scattered across his computer screens. Around him, 15 other human scientists and engineers worked in the cramped research lab that used to store mining equipment. They had turned it into a command center for the most ambitious project humanity had ever attempted. "This is insane," muttered Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a material scientist from Station 5. She was reading through equations that described how to compress hydrogen into the density needed for stellar fusion. "These calculations require precision we can't achieve with mining equipment." "Then we'll make it work anyway," Marcus said. He pulled up another file on his screen. "Look at this. Project Prometheus. Earth scientists in 2156 actually built a prototype stellar ignition device. It was small, only meant to create a fusion reaction the size of a large building, but the principles are the same." "What happened to it?" asked Chen Lu, a young engineer who had been working the asteroid mines for 2 years. "The Concordat happened," Marcus said bitterly. "When they came to Earth, they reviewed all human technology. Anything they considered dangerous was classified and locked away. They told us stellar engineering was beyond our capability, that we needed to focus on simpler tasks. They buried this research so deep that most people forgot it existed." Yuki leaned closer to the screen. "Wait, this design uses a cascading fusion trigger. That's brilliant. Instead of trying to ignite the entire mass at once, you create a chain reaction starting from a small point." "Exactly. The Concordat uses brute force methods for their stellar engineering. This is more elegant. More efficient." Marcus smiled for the first time in days. "More human." The door opened and Sarah walked in, bringing a blast of cold air with her. The temperature across all stations had dropped 20 degrees in the past week. People were wearing every piece of clothing they owned just to stay warm. "Tell me you have good news," Sarah said. Marcus gestured to the screens. "We found the research we need. The theory is solid. Now we just need to build it." "How big are we talking?" "The catalyst array needs to be about 2 kilometers across. We'll position it at the Lagrange point between this moon and the gas giant. The giant has all the hydrogen and helium we need for fuel. We just need to compress it and ignite it." Sarah looked at the designs, trying to understand the glowing lines and numbers. 2 kilometers. We've never built anything that large in space." "We've never needed to," Marcus replied, "but we have the materials. Every station in this system is full of construction equipment and refined metals. We'll tear apart everything we don't absolutely need for life support." Over the next 2 weeks, the plan took shape. Every human in the Kepler system received their assignment. The construction crews from stations 1 through 6 would begin building the main catalyst array. The mining teams from the asteroid belt would gather additional materials and weld them into place. The refineries would work around the clock producing the specialized alloys needed for the fusion chamber. The hardest job went to the dive teams. They would take small ships down into the crushing atmosphere of the gas giant, harvesting hydrogen and helium-3. It was dangerous work. The pressure could crush a ship in seconds if the shields failed. But they needed fuel, and the gas giant had plenty. Sarah watched from the observation deck as the first pieces of the catalyst array began taking shape in the distance. Hundreds of workers in spacesuits moved like ants around the glowing welding torches. The structure looked crude compared to the smooth, elegant technology of the Concordat. It was all sharp angles and rough welds built from whatever materials they could find, but it was theirs. "Commander Chen," a voice called over her communicator. It was James Okafor from Station 3. "We have a problem," Sarah sighed. There was always a problem. "What is it?" "We're being watched. A Concordat observation ship just entered the system. They're keeping their distance, but they're definitely monitoring us." Sarah felt anger rise in her chest. "Let them watch. Maybe they'll learn something." The Concordat ship maintained a position 10 million kilometers away, Far enough to be safe, but close enough to observe everything. Sarah knew they were recording data, probably placing bets on how long the humans would survive. She had heard stories about concordant viewing parties, where aliens would watch lesser species struggle and die while making commentary about their efforts. The broadcasts from the observation ship confirmed her suspicions. Marcus managed to intercept their transmissions and translate them. "Look at them," one alien voice said, speaking in the clicking language of the Vrin species. "They're actually trying to build a stellar ignition array. How amusing." "Primitives don't understand the complexity involved," another voice replied. "They'll realize their mistake when the fusion chamber collapses and kills them all. I give them 2 more weeks before they accept their fate. I'll wager 3 weeks. Humans are remarkably stubborn, even when stupidity would be more efficient." Marcus turned off the translation. "Should I tell the others?" Sarah shook her head. "No, let the aliens talk. We'll respond with action, not words." But keeping morale up became harder as the days passed. The cold was getting worse. People were dying from accidents in the construction zone. A welding torch malfunction killed 3 workers on Station 8. A dive team lost contact in the gas giant's atmosphere and never returned. The dead were given brief ceremonies and then their bodies were sent into space. There was no time for proper mourning. Some people began to lose hope. Sarah found a group of workers in Station 7's common area, sitting in silence, not even bothering to work on their assignments. "What's going on here?" she asked. A woman looked up at her with hollow eyes. "We're wasting our time, Commander. Even if we build this thing, even if Marcus's calculations are perfect, we're just delaying the inevitable. We can't compete with species that have been among the stars for thousands of years." Sarah sat down beside them. "You're right. We can't compete with them using their methods and their technology, but we're not trying to be like them. We're trying to survive using human ingenuity and human determination. The Concordate thinks we're too primitive to matter. They abandoned us because they don't think we're worth saving. I say we prove them wrong. Even if we fail, at least we fail on our own terms." The woman stared at her for a long moment, then slowly nodded. She stood up and went back to her workstation. The others followed. Sarah left the common area and returned to the observation deck. The catalyst array was growing larger every day, a strange metal flower blooming in the darkness. In 3 weeks, they would find out if human stubborn defiance could overcome the laws of physics and the cruelty of an indifferent galaxy. The catalyst array grew in the void like something alive. Sarah watched through the observation window as thousands of workers swarmed around the massive structure, their welding torches creating brief stars in the darkness. The array was supposed to be circular, but material shortages had forced them to improvise. Now it looked more like a broken wheel with uneven spokes, held together by determination and desperation. "Section 12 is complete," Maria Santos reported over the communications channel. Her voice was tired but steady. "Moving teams to Section 13 now. We're 3 days behind schedule." Sarah checked her datapad. 3 days behind schedule meant they had less than 2 weeks before the star collapsed completely. The temperature on all stations had dropped to freezing. People worked in full thermal suits even indoors. The last heating systems had been cannibalized for parts needed in the catalyst array. "How's the fuel collection going?" Sarah asked. "We've filled 80% of the storage tanks," replied Thomas Wu, the dive team coordinator. His team made daily runs into the gas giant's atmosphere, skimming the surface to collect hydrogen and helium-3. "But we lost another ship this morning. The pressure crushed the hull before they could activate emergency protocols. 5 people dead." Sarah closed her eyes. That brought the total death count to 47. 47 people who had died so the rest might live. She added their names to the list she kept in her personal log. When this was over, assuming anyone survived, those names would be remembered. The door to the command center opened and Marcus stumbled in. He looked worse each day, his face pale and thin from skipping meals to work longer hours. He carried a portable computer, its screen covered in equations. "I think I found the problem," Marcus said without greeting. He placed the computer on the table and pointed to a series of numbers. "The ignition sequence requires more energy than we calculated. The initial fusion reaction needs a massive spike of power to become self-sustaining. We don't have a power source that strong." Sarah felt her heart sink. "How much more energy?" "About 40% more than our original estimate. We'd need to connect every reactor in the system simultaneously and dump all their power into the catalyst at once." Even then, I'm not sure it would be enough. Can we build more reactors? Marcus shook his head. Not in the time we have left. And even if we could, we don't have the materials. We've already stripped everything we can spare from every station. Sarah sat down heavily in her chair. Around the command center, other officers had stopped their work to listen. The weight of Marcus's words pressed down on everyone. They had come so far, sacrificed so much, and now the laws of physics were going to defeat them. There has to be a solution, Sarah said quietly. We didn't come this far just to fail. Marcus rubbed his eyes. I'll keep working on it. Maybe there's something I'm missing, some way to make the reaction more efficient or reduce the energy requirements. He left the command center, taking his portable computer with him. Sarah watched him go, then turned back to the window. The catalyst array hung in space like a promise waiting to be fulfilled or broken. The Concordate observation fleet had grown. What started as one ship had become 5, all maintaining a safe distance while recording everything. Sarah knew their broadcasts were being sent across the galaxy, humans attempting the impossible. It probably made for good entertainment. She activated her communicator and sent a message to James Okafor. How's morale on Station 3? There was a long pause before he answered. Honestly, people are scared. They know something's wrong, even if we haven't told them the details. Some are asking if we should just accept our fate and make peace with what's coming. Tell them we're not giving up. We're going to find a way, are we? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like we've hit a wall we can't climb over. Sarah didn't have an answer for him. She ended the communication and sat in silence, watching the workers continue their tasks on the catalyst array. They welded and connected and tested, not knowing that all their effort might be meaningless. 3 days passed. Marcus and his team worked without sleeping, running simulation after simulation, trying to find a way to make the numbers work. They tried everything: different ignition sequences, alternative fusion methods, ways to boost the efficiency of the catalyst array itself. Nothing worked. They were still 40% short of the energy needed. On the 4th day, Sarah made her way through Station 7's cold corridors to the medical bay. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, the station's chief medical officer, was treating a worker who had suffered frostbite during a repair job outside. The man's fingers were black and dead. Amara would have to amputate them. How bad is it across the system? Sarah asked. Amara finished wrapping the man's hand and sent him to recovery before answering. We've had 34 cases of severe frostbite in the last week, 16 cases of hypothermia, and those are just the ones serious enough to require medical attention. Everyone is suffering from the cold to some degree. If we don't ignite that star soon, we won't live long enough to see it fail. Sarah nodded slowly. I need to ask you something medical, about emergency power cells. Every human had an emergency power cell implanted in their chest. It was standard concordate procedure for workers in dangerous environments. The cell stored enough energy to power a distress beacon and life support for 72 hours if someone became stranded. It was meant to keep people alive long enough for rescue. What about them? Amara asked. If we extracted all the power from every cell in the system simultaneously, how much energy would that give us? Amara's eyes widened. You can't be serious. Those cells are connected directly to people's nervous systems. Draining them completely would be excruciatingly painful. It might even cause permanent damage. But it wouldn't kill them. Probably not. But they'd wish they were dead for a few minutes. Sarah thanked her and left the medical bay. She walked through the station, seeing the faces of the people she was responsible for. They were cold, tired, and scared. But they were still working. Still fighting. Still refusing to give up. She called an emergency meeting of all station commanders. When their holographic faces appeared around her, she told them about Marcus's discovery and the energy shortage. There might be a way, she said, but it requires something from everyone in the system. Something painful. She explained the idea about the emergency power cells. As she spoke, she watched the reactions on the holographic faces. Shock, concern, fear, but also something else, understanding, acceptance. You're asking 40,000 people to hurt themselves on the chance that it might work. James said slowly, yes, I won't order this. It has to be voluntary. But if everyone agrees, if we all drain our emergency power cells at the exact moment of ignition, we might have enough energy to start the fusion reaction. Maria Santos laughed, a sound without humor. The aliens left us here to die in the cold and dark. Now we're going to set ourselves on fire to light a new sun, I can't think of anything more human than that. I'm in, James said. One by one, the other commanders agreed. They would put it to a vote among their people. Everyone would choose for themselves. The vote took one day. When the results came in, Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. 40,000 humans had voted. The result was unanimous. They would all give everything they had to create their sunrise. 72 hours remained before complete system failure. The dying star pulsed weakly in the sky, barely bright enough to cast shadows. Sarah stood in the command center of Station 7, surrounded by screens showing every angle of the catalyst array. The massive structure was complete, ugly and asymmetrical but ready to attempt the impossible. Marcus moved between computer terminals, checking calculations one final time. His hands shook from exhaustion and cold. Every person in the command center wore 3 layers of thermal clothing. Their breath formed clouds that hung in the freezing air. Final systems check, Sarah announced over the general communications channel that connected all 12 stations. Power teams report status. One by one, the station commanders reported in. Every reactor in the system had been connected to the catalyst array through a network of power conduits that stretched millions of kilometers. Every solar collector, every backup generator, every piece of equipment capable of producing electricity had been linked together. It was the most complex power grid ever built by humans, assembled in just 5 weeks. All reactors online and synchronized, James Okafor confirmed from Station 3. We're ready. Fuel team status? Sarah asked. Storage tanks are at maximum capacity, Thomas Wu replied. The compression pumps are active. When you give the word, we'll begin feeding hydrogen into the fusion chamber. Sarah turned to Marcus. Are we ready? Marcus stared at his screens for a long moment. The calculations say we have a 37% chance of success. Those aren't good odds. They're better than 0. That's what we had when the Concordat left us here. Marcus nodded slowly. Then yes, we're ready. Sarah activated the communication system that would broadcast her voice to every human in the Kepler system. 40,000 people waited to hear her words. She thought about what to say, then decided simple was best. This is Commander Chen. In a few minutes, we're going to attempt something that everyone said was impossible. The Concordat abandoned us because they thought we were too primitive to save ourselves. They're watching right now, waiting for us to fail. I say we show them what humans can do when we refuse to accept defeat. No matter what happens in the next hour, you should all be proud. We came together. We built something incredible. And we're going to light our own sun. Ignition sequence begins in 5 minutes. She ended the transmission and looked around the command center. Every face showed the same mixture of fear and determination. They had come so far, lost so much. Now everything depended on the next few minutes. The Concordat observation fleet had positioned themselves closer than before. 5 ships hung in space like spectators at an execution. Sarah knew they were recording everything, broadcasting the humans' final attempt across the galaxy. Let them watch. Let them see. Beginning countdown, Marcus announced. 5 minutes to ignition. The next 5 minutes felt like hours. Sarah watched the countdown timer on her screen while her heart pounded in her chest. Around the system, 40,000 humans prepared themselves for what was coming. They checked their connections to the power grid. They said goodbye to the people they loved just in case. They waited. 1 minute, Marcus called out. Sarah activated her personal communicator one final time. All teams, this is it. When I give the signal, drain all emergency power cells simultaneously. Every solar collector and laser tool should be aimed at the catalyst array. We give it everything we have, everything. 30 seconds. Sarah's hand moved to her chest, feeling the small emergency power cell implanted there. In 30 seconds, it would discharge all its energy at once. Dr. Amara had warned her it would feel like being struck by lightning from inside. But pain was temporary. Death was forever. 10 seconds. 9. 8. Marcus's voice remained steady as he counted down. Sarah found herself holding her breath. 3, 2, 1. Initiating ignition sequence now. Several things happened simultaneously. The fuel pumps activated, forcing compressed hydrogen and helium-3 into the fusion chamber at the center of the catalyst array. Every reactor in the system dumped its power through the conduits. The massive array began to glow as energy poured into it. Now, Sarah shouted. All cells discharge. She activated her emergency power cell and felt fire explode through her body. Pain unlike anything she had ever experienced tore through her nerves. She heard herself scream. Around the command center, other people were screaming too. Across the system, 40,000 humans were experiencing the same agony. But through the pain, Sarah kept her eyes on the screens. She watched as every available energy source in the system focused on a single point in space. Solar collectors, normally used for mining operations, redirected their beams toward the catalyst array. Laser cutting tools meant for breaking apart asteroids all fired at once. The combined power of an entire civilization concentrated on one goal. The catalyst array blazed with light so intense the cameras had to dim their sensors. The fusion chamber at its center began to compress the fuel, forcing the atoms closer and closer together. In theory, when the pressure and temperature reached critical levels, the hydrogen would begin fusing into helium, releasing massive amounts of energy. In theory, reaction not stabilizing, Marcus gasped through gritted teeth. His face was pale and covered in sweat. The fuel is too cold. The compression isn't enough. Sarah wanted to respond, but she couldn't form words. The pain from the power cell discharge was overwhelming. She could only watch the screens and hope. The catalyst array pulsed. Once, twice. The light dimmed. "We're losing it," someone said. "The reaction is collapsing." Sarah felt despair wash over her. They had failed. Given everything they had, and it wasn't enough. Then Marcus did something that nobody expected. He stood up, walked to the main power control panel, and began entering commands. His hands moved across the controls with desperate speed. "What are you doing?" Sarah managed to ask. "Overriding safety protocols," Marcus said. "I'm rerouting power from life support systems. If we can give it just a little more energy, just enough to reach critical temperature, that will kill us. We'll suffocate before the star ignites. We're dead anyway if this doesn't work." Marcus entered the final command. "Dumping all remaining power now." The lights in every station across the system went dark. Life support systems shut down. Oxygen recyclers stopped. The last of humanity's power reserves flowed through the conduits toward the catalyst array. Sarah watched the screens, powered now only by their internal batteries. The catalyst array blazed brighter than ever. The fuel compressed further. The temperature climbed, and then, in the center of the fusion chamber, something changed. The hydrogen atoms, pressed together with impossible force and heated to millions of degrees, began to fuse. The reaction released energy, which heated the surrounding fuel, which caused more fusion, which released more energy. A chain reaction began exactly as the old Earth research had predicted. The catalyst array exploded with light. For a moment, Sarah thought they had failed catastrophically. But then she realized the light wasn't from an explosion. It was stable, sustained, growing. A new star was being born. The fusion reaction spread through the catalyst array, consuming the fuel and releasing light and heat. It wasn't large, not yet. It flickered and pulsed as it struggled to stabilize. But it was burning. The screens showed the Concordant observation ships suddenly retreating, their sensors overwhelmed by the unexpected success. Sarah watched them flee and felt satisfaction through her exhaustion. Around the command center, people were crying, laughing, hugging each other. The pain from the power cell discharge was fading, replaced by something she hadn't felt in weeks. Warmth. The new star's light reached Station 7, weak but growing stronger. Through the observation window, Sarah could see the dawn they had created. Small, imperfect, but theirs. Marcus collapsed into his chair, his face showing wonder and disbelief. It worked. It actually worked. Sarah smiled despite the tears running down her face. "Welcome to the sunrise, Marcus." The one humans made with their own hands. The star they called Defiance burned in the darkness, small and unstable but alive. Sarah stood in the observation deck 3 days after ignition, watching maintenance crews work on the catalyst array. The fusion reaction was self-sustaining now, but it needed constant adjustment to remain stable. Teams worked in shifts around the clock, fine-tuning the magnetic fields that contained the reaction and feeding more fuel into the system. The temperature across all stations had risen above freezing for the first time in weeks. People had taken off their thermal suits. Children were playing in the corridors again. Life support systems were back online. The new star wasn't as bright as the old one had been, but it was enough. They would survive. Marcus entered the observation deck carrying a datapad. He looked better now, having finally gotten some sleep and a hot meal. We're getting transmissions from all over the galaxy. Hundreds of them. Sarah took the datapad and scrolled through the messages. They came from dozens of different species in the Concordat. Most expressed shock and disbelief. Some included detailed questions about the technology humans had used. A few were angry, demanding that the humans shut down their illegal star immediately. "What about Earth?" Sarah asked. Marcus smiled. "That's the interesting part. Earth started receiving news of what we did about 12 hours ago, accounting for light speed delay. According to the messages we're getting, humans everywhere are talking about it. There have been protests in 3 major cities, demanding better treatment from the Concordat. Some human workers in other systems have stopped following orders." Sarah felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. "We've started something. Yes, the Concordat kept humans under control by making us believe we were inferior, that we needed them to survive. You just proved that wrong in the most visible way possible." An alert sounded on Sarah's communicator. James Okafor's voice came through urgently. "Commander, we have incoming ships. Multiple Concordat vessels just entered the system." Sarah rushed to the command center with Marcus following behind. The main screen showed 6 large Concordat warships approaching. They were still several hours away, but moving with purpose. This wasn't an observation fleet. This was enforcement. "Open a channel," Sarah ordered. The screen changed to show a Vrin commander, its insect-like features arranged in what Sarah had learned was an expression of displeasure. "Human Commander Chen, I am High Enforcer Zekurs of the Concordat Security Fleet. You have violated multiple galactic laws regarding stellar engineering. You will immediately shut down your unauthorized fusion reaction and surrender yourselves for judgment." Sarah felt 40,000 people waiting for her response. She thought about everything they had been through. The cold, the fear, the deaths, the pain. All of it to prove that humans deserve to exist on their own terms. "High Enforcer, with respect, we decline your order. This star was built from human materials using human knowledge and human labor. It harms no one and threatens no one. We created it to survive after your Concordat abandoned us to die. We will not shut it down." The Vrin's mandibles clicked together in agitation. "You were not abandoned. You were deemed too resource-intensive to evacuate. The Concordat made a logical decision based on efficiency. You left 40,000 people to freeze in the dark because saving us wasn't convenient. That's not logic. That's cruelty. Your species lacks the authority to make such judgments. You will comply or face consequences." Sarah looked at the warships on the screen. She knew they could destroy every station in the system, could tear apart the catalyst array and extinguish defiance, could kill every human here and claim they were enforcing the law. But she also knew something else. The galaxy was watching. News of what happened here would spread everywhere. If the Concordat destroyed humans for the crime of refusing to die, other species would see it. Would remember it. "Do what you feel you must," Sarah said calmly. "But know that if you destroy us, you'll be proving everything I said about the Concordat. You'll show every species in the galaxy that you only tolerate those who obey without question. Is that really the message you want to send?" The Vrin commander was silent for a long moment. Sarah could see the calculation happening behind its alien eyes. It had probably received orders to shut down the human operation by any means necessary, but the political situation had changed. Humans weren't just forgotten workers anymore. They were the species that built a star. "This situation requires consultation with higher authority," the Vrin finally said. "We will maintain position while awaiting instructions. But be warned, human. Your defiance will not be forgotten." The transmission ended. Sarah released a breath she didn't know she was holding. "They're not sure what to do with us," Marcus observed. "We've become a problem they didn't expect." Over the next week, more ships arrived in the Kepler system. Not just Concordat vessels, but independent traders, news organizations, and representatives from dozens of species. The space around Defiance became crowded with observers, all wanting to see the impossible thing humans had created. Sarah received visitors from across the galaxy. Some came to offer congratulations. Others came to learn how humans had achieved stellar ignition. A few came to warn her that the Concordat would never truly accept what had happened here. The most interesting visitor came on the 8th day. A small ship arrived carrying a delegation from Earth. When they appeared on the command center screen, Sarah saw human faces for the first time in 3 years. They looked well-fed and healthy, nothing like the exhausted crews of the Kepler system. "Commander Chen, I'm Ambassador Liu from the Earth Diplomatic Corps," the lead delegate said. "We've been authorized by Earth's human government to inform you that your actions have created significant political complications. I'm sorry if our refusal to die quietly caused problems," Sarah replied with barely concealed sarcasm. Ambassador Liu had the grace to look uncomfortable. "What you accomplished here is remarkable, but you need to understand the position you've put us in. Earth has delicate relationships with the Concordat. If we appear to support your rebellion, we built a star so we wouldn't freeze to death. That's survival, not rebellion. The Concordat sees it differently. They see a human population refusing their authority and inspiring others to do the same. There have been work stoppages on 12 different worlds. Protests on Earth itself. You've become a symbol." Sarah looked at the faces of the Earth delegation. They were politicians and diplomats, people whose job was to maintain comfortable relationships with the powerful. They had never been abandoned, never been considered expendable. "I didn't ask to be a symbol," Sarah said. "I just wanted my people to live. But if our survival inspires other humans to demand better treatment, I won't apologize for that." Ambassador Liu sighed. "What do you want, Commander?" "Recognition. The Concordat needs to acknowledge that this star is ours, that the Kepler system is now human territory, and they need to agree that humans throughout the galaxy have the right to self-determination. That's asking for fundamental changes to the entire galactic order. Then maybe the galactic order needs to change." The negotiations took 3 more weeks. The Concordat leadership argued and debated. Some species supported the humans, impressed by their achievement. Others opposed any change to the established hierarchy. But the debate itself was significant. For the first time, the question of human rights was being discussed at the highest levels of galactic government. Finally, an agreement was reached. The Kepler system would be recognized as an autonomous human territory. The Concordat would provide materials and support to stabilize Defiance and improve the living conditions of the 40,000 humans who built it. In exchange, humans agreed to share the stellar ignition technology with the Concordat, to be used only for humanitarian purposes. It wasn't everything Sarah had hoped for. Humans across the galaxy were still second-class citizens, but it was a beginning, a crack in the wall that had kept humanity down. On the day the agreement was signed, Sarah stood in the observation deck and watched Defiance burn. The star was stronger now, no longer flickering. The maintenance crews had learned to keep it stable. It would burn for decades, maybe longer if they continued to improve the technology. Marcus joined her at the window. "What happens now?" Sarah smiled. "Now we make sure this star keeps burning, and we wait for the next group of humans who decide they'd rather light a fire than accept the darkness." Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds where humans worked for alien masters, people looked up at the stars and saw possibility. They had watched the people of Kepler build their own sunrise. They had seen that humans were not as helpless as they had been told. And in the cold void of space, a small imperfect star burned as proof that sometimes the smallest species could achieve the impossible. All it took was the refusal to accept defeat and the courage to create light where none existed before. Defiance burned on, a testament to human stubbornness and the universal truth that those who are counted as nothing can still change everything.